Dragon's Dogma, an unforgettable cult classic RPG from Capcom, captivated players back in 2012. Its unique blend of action, exploration, and an innovative companion system called Pawns set it apart in a crowded genre. Players climbed on giant monsters, explored a fascinating open world, forged bonds with their AI companions. Now, a whole 12 years later, we finally have the long-awaited sequel, Dragon's Dogma 2. While the core spirit of Dragon's Dogma remains, this sequel takes us in a bold new direction. The world is different, the story unfolds in unexpected ways, and the gameplay mechanics have been refined and expanded. It's the sequel fans have yearned for, but it's also so much more, a chance to really rediscover the thrill of this unique franchise. Does Dragon's Dogma 2 live up to the hype? Is it worth diving into? To really get to grips with Dragon's Dogma 2, I'm going to break down this game into 5 key categories. Dragon's Dogma 2 takes this to a whole new level. While still kind of grounded in that European Northern English look, the world is so much larger, more varied. You'll still have, the classic fantasy forests and ruins, but imagine sprawling deserts, snow-capped mountains, maybe even these vibrant coastal regions. And think about how the world itself tells a story. Are there, vast battlefields hinting at past conflicts? Maybe hidden settlements carved into mountainsides? It really makes you wonder about the history of this place. The creatures add to this too. While you'll definitely see your griffins and chimeras, the team might also take inspiration from lesser-known myths and legends. Imagine encountering a creature based on a Japanese yokai or some cryptid from South folklore. It keeps that familiarity, but also adds this touch of the unexpected, Right from the start, Dragon's Dogma 2 hits you with a sense of scale that the original never quite achieved. Remember how Gransys felt pretty contained? Well, this new world, it feels like they took that familiar high fantasy aesthetic, the forests, the villages, the ruins, and stretched it across a much larger map. You've got imposing mountain ranges, coastal areas. It almost makes the familiar parts feel more quaint in comparison, and it's not just about the size. There's this feeling of history layered into the environment. You don't just stumble upon a crumbling fortress. It feels like the site of a major battle, maybe from past Arisen conflicts. There are hints of civilizations lost to time, and I wouldn't be surprised if hidden settlements exist, maybe carved right into the cliffsides or tucked away in dense forests. This all makes exploration so much more rewarding. Yeah, finding resources and loot is great, but I get this itch to uncover the stories this world holds. What happened at that battlefield? Who lived in this abandoned village? Your main pawn learns and grows as other players use them, and you do the same with theirs. There's this cool community aspect where you're constantly improving your little team, not just yourself. The game encourages experimentation too. The class system, or vocations, gives you tons of flexibility to play around with. Warrior one day, mage the next, and they all feel genuinely different in how they handle. All of this is wrapped up in this mysterious world that you always want to explore more of, and a level of challenge that really forces you to master your skills and think strategically. Dragon's Dogma's story. Yeah, it wasn't about crazy twists or anything, but it had this raw power to it, something almost like an old myth. This sense of ancient history, and something really unsettling about being the Arisen. Dragon's Dogma 2 seems like it's going to dive deeper into those kinds of themes. Expect hidden lore, forgotten forces that could shake things up, and of course that classic Arisen versus dragon struggle. This time, it sounds like they'll really focus on how power changes hands, and if being a hero is even really possible. The way they emphasize player choice makes it sound like these themes will play out in different ways for everyone. Characters who seem straightforward might have their own motives, making you question who to trust. And pawns, well, they always give you a glimpse of how your actions have bigger consequences. While you'll be back in Gransys, don't expect things to feel the same. The sequel seems ready to dig deeper into the setting's past hidden groups, old conflicts, and how those still affect the present. The battle between order and chaos, humans and monsters, promises some surprising moments. When I first started Dragon's Dogma 2, it felt amazing. There's something special about those first hours in a game when everything's new, right? It had all the makings of a true classic. But the longer I played, I noticed something that held it back from being a perfect masterpiece for me. As much as I love this game, it had some repetitive moments or things that just weren't quite my style. Don't get me wrong, there's no shortage of things to do in the world. However, too many side quests boil down to the same formula. Go here, kill this, grab that. Early on, there's a primal satisfaction in taking on a beast and claiming your reward. But the problem is, this loop becomes a major part of the side content, and that repetition started to dilute the world's sense of surprise and discovery. I remember this one stretch where I swear I took like 5 contracts in a row, all about hunting wolves in more or less the same spot. Each fight was basically the same, just with a different number of wolves. It went from feeling like a proper adventure to, well, kind of a grind. This lack of quest variety made Gransys, despite its beauty, feel less like a thriving world, and more like a list of monster fights to check off. I would have loved more quests with unique objectives, interesting characters, or even small choices that change things up a bit. Maybe delivering something to the right person gets you a cool reward, or clearing out bandits makes the villagers friendlier. Look, don't get me wrong, Dragon's Dogma 2 has its epic moments, and those are still amazing. But those smaller moments in between the big fights, that's where they could have made Gransys feel truly alive. Just a bit more depth in the side quests could have taken the game to a whole other level. Dragon's Dogma 2 takes the thrilling combat of the original and turns it up to 11. New skills, insane climbing moves, and seamless fighting styles make taking down those massive beasts an absolute blast. It's the perfect mix of wild, over-the-top fun and figuring out clever strategies. But the real heart of this game, the pawns, you can customize them like crazy, and their AI is surprisingly good, making them feel like true partners on your crazy adventures. Yeah, they mess up sometimes in hilarious ways, but hey, that just adds to the unpredictable chaos, right? Okay, I've got to be honest. The story isn't perfect. It's got some epic moments, don't get me wrong, but it loses focus here and there. It's hard to really care when the pacing stumbles, and some side quests just feel like busy work. And Gransys, wow, it's a stunning world. But sometimes it feels more like a beautiful painting than a living, breathing place. I wanted more exciting side quests, world-changing events, and ways to truly make my mark. But here's the thing. Despite its flaws, this is one of the most fun games I've ever played. There's just so much you can do, and so many different ways to fight. Unique monsters and challenging boss battles. There's tons of variety, which is what stands out to me the most. Even if some parts feel a bit repetitive, I still had a blast with this game. I'd find myself spending hours crafting, exploring, and just getting lost in the world. That kind of freedom makes this one of my all-time favorites, and I'd absolutely recommend it to anyone who loves a good adventure.